right, welcome to the Soccer Podcast USA. This is your host, Christina Uncle, joined with me today. Once again, I gotta find like a really cool intro for you, Lori, and I'll figure that out for the next time. The one and only Lori Lindsay. Welcome. Loving the hair. It's like this whole wet, like comb over look. We're definitely doing it today. So.
Oh yes, it's I'm in the grow out stages, so it's gonna be even more awkward with weeks to come. Like no more shaved sides, and this is gonna be super long. Yeah, so. Buckle up for awkward hair. Nice to meet you. So
no. So if you don't know, go back to Lori's like hair episodes, right? So like not like we have an episode, but like there's like a history of Lori's hair, and I loved it. So when I refereed her, I'm always like, what kind of hair does Lori have this season? Like I actually followed your hair. Like that's not really in my tactical notes when I was determining whether or not you were going to be holding the ball or dispersing it, and who your center mids were with you. But I actually showed up every season curious at what your hair looked like, and then when you chopped it all off, I was like, whoa, it was a cool look, because not many people could pull that off. So, and it was pre Megan Rapinoe, FYI. It was pre Megan Rapinoe. I know that for a fact. Awesome. Well, no, I mean, thanks for jumping on. This is not anyone. My producers are gonna be like, where's she coming this from? But I got a question for you. Flour tortillas or corn tortillas? This is really driving me nuts right now. Like I had no bread in the pantry. I go diving in for like meat and cheese, and there's only corn tortillas in our pantry, and I have not been doing the grocery shopping for the past 2 years and my family, to be quite honest. Where are you at? Because this can really determine, and I'm pretty sure our British producers have no idea about tortillas, but where are you at with between corn and flour tortillas? This is really going to dictate a lot of this.
Okay, I might not be on the show ever again. No, I have two thoughts. If I'm at home, then I'll have flour tortillas. Anytime I'm out and getting like tacos, like street tacos or anywhere out and about, I am going to go with corn. Actually, that's not entirely true. Actually, that's not entirely true, because one of my favorite taco trucks in Philadelphia, these steak tacos, are flour. So never mind. It honestly just depends on if I'm looking at the pictures. Yeah, there are some of the most amazing tacos, and they're delicious. And you get 3, and they're flour. So
what
about
the
you?
name of this place in Philly? Because like I don't imagine Philly for being tacos. No offense.
Yeah, well, it is like right by the Italian market, which is also just like there's also a whole Mexican area as well. You can get tacos, and this is a taco truck that's kind of like off. A block and a half off. Yeah. So.
Okay. We'll figure out the name of this place, because that sounds like something. I never go to Philly, but that sounds like.
I'll snap a photo for us, okay? Because when I walk by there, I'll snap a photo. Oh yeah, they're delicious. They're delicious.
I'll have to call up Philadelphia's airport that reached out and liked our show, so that I can fly in to go try these tacos.
Exactly. Actually, we need a sponsor, an airline sponsor. Here we go. Like we need to get you here.
Come on, TPA in Philadelphia. We're talking about TPA. They argue is the best airport. Phoebe the Flamingo, but you guys will see that later. Okay, so for me, corn tortillas. To your point, very very rare. If we're in South California for Baja Street tacos, I'll go for corn. But aside from that, it's flour every day. Anyways, that was how I entered this state of mind coming into this podcast. I was very angry at whoever bought corn tortillas for the house. So thanks for doing with that. But you know what?
Ted,
guess what?
We need to know.
We need to know what the heck did you die? Oh, like, and they're like the fake corn tortillas too, right? Like they're anyways. I'll leave it at that. But we'll end up asking Foudy, because she's, guess what, not here again. So we're gonna go ahead and call her out on that. So maybe she, we'll see what her tortilla choice is. But well, thanks for entertaining that band with me. I just still on it. But speaking of, speaking of foreign and domestic, let's get into more of the soccer side of it. And we're going to start with country, right? Obviously, Soccer Podcast USA covering the United States. And there's just really interesting conversations and discussions going on right now, specifically, obviously, focused on the men's national team here. because it's Pochettino and they have a World Cup next year and we're hosting it. And I just see all of this chatter. I just covered Nations League with CBS, and I just see all of this chatter around whether or not Pochettino was the right hire, the right choice, with Bruce Arenas coming out with some pretty blunt and direct comments, which it's cool. That's how he rolls. What are your thoughts on everything going on, whether or not he's the right hire? How do we frame this? Like, is this fair? All of that stuff. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting because this feels very much like very similar to when Greg Berhalter was the coach. These were the same conversations. Is he the right coach for this group? We're not getting the best out of it. And then obviously they go out and get Pochettino, who's an incredible coach. But I still think it's early days. I just think like this is how the sport has grown. And I also think when you look at the group, it has the potential to be an incredible group. But I also think that has been the component that we continuously heard, right, is the potential. We haven't seen it all come together. And maybe that comes down to there's been too much pressure put on this group. Obviously we're not in camps with them, so we don't know. But we do know that the game has grown. And I will say this one thing. I always think about this when I'm hearing some of these conversations. And I think these times are more challenging just because the game has grown. You have more players overseas trying to integrate them back in. You have MLS players, who's playing a lot, who's not. Some of our top goalkeepers aren't getting minutes. Who are you bringing in, right? So it's just like who's playing full 90-minute games and are in game sharp when they're coming in. And so there's all of those questions where I always think back to a comment that I heard Jimmy Conrad talk about with the 2010 team and how it seemed or was much more clear about the group and the identity of the group because almost every single player played in Major League Soccer. So they were all like leaders on their team. You understood their style of play, and it was a much easier way to bond together and have like that very singular goal in a short amount of time. And I think those days, the way that I interpreted what he was saying was it's very different now. And so there's always going to be this kind of challenge with this men's group of when you have players playing overseas and playing here domestically and how to incorporate and how to get the best and who is the best actually, right? And who is most importantly playing at the top of their game when you're being called in, not just going off of reputation.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2 points to that. I think it's a difficult conversation because I agree with you fully in the sense that there's been too many. I agree. I really do appreciate Jimmy's statements on those about the players and where they're all playing and kind of the same identity and DNA. So when they jumped from club to country, it was consistent, right? Like for the most part, they were all kind of already attuned to the same spot. I know when I spoke briefly
to the calendar as well.
Yeah,
right?
Same calendar, same mindset, right? Expectations, level of play. So it just clicked. And I know recently I've been talking to U.S. Soccer, and like I said, like, okay, once Emma gets her feet underneath her, which is crazy, right? Winning a gold medal and everything, and I was like, but when she gets her feet underneath her. Like, I'd love to know what U.S. Soccer's philosophy and theme and the development is going to look like so that for me, as a club in the United States, I kind of want to see what our country is focusing on so that if we run along with consistent themes, some of our players can jump between club and country seamlessly. And that's a domestic approach. But, going to, and I agree. We interviewed Emma and we discussed how important it is for her team to actually play around the rest of the world so they understand different, styles, different cultures, different ways so they can be more pivotable. The conversation, I still don't fully agree that the conversation should be the players should come back and play only domestic football. There's pros to that.
Oh, yeah. No, me either.
Yeah. Yeah. But then even like watching where kind of to your point, like, our men's national team had a lot of, and I think people do this all the time. I know agents do this all the time. Shout out to you, agents. The difference between potential in a player versus the actual already executed skill set of that player, right? So the men's national team, and you made this point earlier, was, and TT, Terry Henry has been harping on it, and Clinton Dempsey is like, they've been overpromised in the sense of this is the wonder kid, this is the Galacticos, right? This is going to be the men's national team. But that's based on potential, not on what they were executing, right?
Yep.
So we see Christian Pulisic and AC Milan really delivering at the club side of it and being that kind of engine in the center. But then he comes to country and he could get lost at times very easy, right? Weston McKennie crushes it, in my opinion, at Juventus. And I'm like, where is this Weston McKennie, right? Like, where
Yep.
he's not doing this on like club side of it. But maybe the pressure is too big. And Thierry Henry made a good point where like everyone's touting Christian Pulisic as Captain America, but he hasn't done anything yet to be he's a future Captain America, obviously, and a marketing thing. Yeah. Do we want to kind of what they did to Alex Morgan, and thankfully she stepped in very gracefully and was able to execute on expectations, which I can only imagine that's a good conversation point. But I think in the context and what you said, is it too early on? It's nuts to say too early on because we have a World Cup in less than almost 365 days from now. But are we putting these... I don't know. I think we're just putting these unrealistic expectations, and then to drag out Pochettino like we did with Greg and just say he was the wrong hire and this is incorrect, et cetera, I think really misses the point about developing players and what that looks like.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's not about like having everybody come back. I was just using that example of Jimmy Conrad and how it was much easier at that point in time, but now it looks different, and it is about how do you get the best? Players getting experience overseas and enjoying that part of their career. I think that is fabulous. But yeah, I agree. It does feel like, and this isn't just like in the last year or two, this has been going on since prior to that previous World Cup, is these expectations of these players, and you feel like it's just like not quite there, right? Regardless of the coach. So I do feel like it's in some ways unfair for Pochettino and also still early, but I understand why these conversations are happening because there's such little time before the next World Cup.
So this is something I saw with England this past summer after the men's Euros is, do you hire a national team coach or an international coach for this, right? And so obviously Pochettino not being American, kind of to your point, like this DNA and this development side of it. Do you have an opinion on that? Like I'm mixed. I actually don't really yet have an opinion on it. But I'm curious as to what your take on that is, hiring an American coach versus a non-American coach. And it's just a debate that goes around the world. I think, what do we have? Real Madrid's coach is probably going to go over to Brazil, as the latest rumors I've been seeing going around. So yeah, what are your thoughts about hiring domestic versus foreign?
Yeah, I don't really have a fully formulated opinion on that yet either, but I also think the game's the game. So it is about like identifying players, and when we're talking about developing players, I think that doesn't actually, there is a lot more on the staff that you can use that would be way more in tune with than maybe Pochettino of the DNA of U.S. soccer, our landscape here in the U.S., and what players are coming through, right? Now that might be a whole process of Pochettino and his group starting to identify these particular qualities, but you can also have those people in positions already while Pochettino is coaching the team, right? So I do think the game's the game, and I think the more understanding too that you have of the global game, the better.
I think the game's the game, because even if you're, highly successful in the club side of things, you're creating your own philosophy. So whether there's an expectation from the American fan to say, we want to see more direct football, we want to see more goals, we want to see more whatever, just because, the ideas from American sports fans, not just American, at the end of the day, you're still creating a philosophy and a theme, and then you have to carry that out through. The difficulty, I think, for a head coach outside of a club coach for national teams is like, you don't get that player every single weekend, day in and day out. I know Emma said that was one of the most difficult things, is you get to see them in their club environment. So it's like 100%. You have to like recalibrate that mindset regardless who you are or where you come from. And maybe it's probably easier for an international coach to do that, because when you're doing club coaching, for the most part, you're getting everyone from different walks of life and different cultures and different identities and different backgrounds, and you're trying to bring them under one crest, under one brand, under one club, to play the same consistent philosophy. Well, I know MLS recently has also talked about considering its shift to a traditional, we always call it the traditional FIFA calendar, but essentially one that aligns with Europe, that fall. It's a spring calendar. I mean, I love this. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's going to be a logistical nightmare. I can agree with that. But at what time do you rip that Band-Aid off? You in for it? You out for it? You and I both know other American sports sometimes. What do you think about this statement about looking into shifting?
Yeah, it's not surprising, I would say. I think when you're trying to maximize international transfers and work with the global game, it's not surprising from that standpoint. But I also think there's a lot more to it, right? How do you, when you think about northern teams playing on the European calendar, then okay, are they going to play a lot of their games away at this point in time? There's a lot more logistics behind
the Green Bay Packer fans sit out there with their cheese heads all the time in the snow. Everyone's
no
like,
doubt.
That's American football, Christina. I was like, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And exactly, maybe. I mean, we don't know, but I know that there are more logistical things than just saying, okay, we're going to the European calendar, right? I do think those are the things you have to think about. But like, if you're looking at terms of, again, continuing to grow viewership, grow the league in general, then I also am understanding why there's like in-depth talks about going to the European calendar. Do you actually have a feeling on this one?
I do, because we're on the international calendar.
Yeah.
Once again, disclaimer, I run a team in the USL Super League, so we are on the traditional international calendar. We're adding Jacksonville, so there's going to be 3 USL Super League teams in the state of Florida, and so the schedule will be coming out here very shortly. I don't know if I'm under embargo when it's coming out, but really exciting to finally get the full Super League schedule. I call that first year problems. Trust me on season ticket holders. Thank you to the 1,600 people who signed up when we did not have a schedule last year. But we will. But it's going to be nice, because one of the things that we did with our schedule was that the majority, I pushed as far back as I could to try to get our first home game in September. Because if anyone's been in Florida in the months of July and August, that's when I used to do preseason. You don't want to be here. It's nasty. You'll get swamp butt, the whole thing. So
I've had swamp butt before. I get it. Many a times.
We pushed as much as we can the Florida teams to really start in like September, October, which yes, that's hurricane season, but because we know we're going to be stacking our games in the month of January's, February's, and March's, right? Really predominantly here in Florida. And no one's complaining. Like, we're not complaining. Weather's beautiful. Our fans aren't complaining. I can guarantee you Spokane isn't complaining. I guarantee you Brooklyn's not complaining. Right. They're going to be in Florida doing a Florida circuit. And I don't know, call it the Grapefruit League. I don't know what you call it. But it'll be nice for that. I don't know, like, MLS exactly how you would do that unless you start stacking more MLS teams in the state of Florida or in more of the southern states. But I get the weather element. I truly do. I actually think the one that weather element impacts, right, because we're outside and fans, but what I think it really impacts is the TV side. And what I mean by that is, like, we've always heard this, right? Like, hey, we can't play this game at this time because there's a big football game going on, American football game going on. That, I think, is what gets impacted the most. That's what gets shifted, and soccer gets, third, fourth bite at the apple here in the United States. And I don't know if they can compete with, I know they can't compete with the numbers. The TV deal numbers on other American sports crush soccer TV numbers, right? We saw that during COVID. You had to have fans in the stadium for these clubs to make money. TV stuff didn't matter. It didn't move the needle meaningfully, at least. Let me put it that way. So I think the look of it is good, just to try to align. I think we do have to remind the American fan that soccer is not an American sport. It's a global game. It's a global sport because there's so much that relies on international windows and transfers. Although it is interesting because it is a closed circuit in MLS and in NWSL. It's like all the player contracts sit in Major League Soccer in the league organization, not per club. So I like it from a purist standpoint, from a business standpoint. It's a logistical nightmare, and I don't know if they can do that. Not within the time frame they noted.
Yeah, I think the time frame is the crucial part in all of this, but I do agree with you. And one of the things I will say is that it is a simplistic view, but like always before you start something, right? It's just about the change. And if we're talking about the fans, it's about getting them accustomed to being like, okay, you might be cold at some of these games, right? But like it does take a little bit of time, and then the hope is that you can like get it going. But at the same time, the alignment is important, but also with some of the big sports in the US, it's about how do you manage around that, I think, is the biggest piece that needs to be figured out.
Yeah, TV's going to push back, just to be quite honest. TV's going to say, we don't have the time slot. So now you're going to start getting games midweek, right? You're going to get games not on the ideal time, and it's just, they don't have it. Although there's still a lot of stadium jackets up there in New England Revolution.
Yeah, I've called so many games at the end of February when we start the season, and the beginning of March, and actually into April. And Whitty and I are like full on, we're like head to toe in snowsuits, and we are so cold. I'm not sure how the players do it too, but add in like a December and January in there too. So there's some things to work out, as we keep saying, but it will be interesting to see what comes to.
I purposely got to a point later on in my career that I refused to take any games in NWSL until after the month of getting closer to May. Anywhere in the Boston teams, this dates how old I am, Boston Breakers, I would not do any of their games until it was after April, May. I found out that first time, the hard time, how cold it could get in that stuff. But no, kind of going to, the growth of the game and changes that are happening here domestically, the conversations. Another huge one just dropped. Me personally, very, very excited by it. NWSL's recent announcement. Oh, wait, get out of here. Yes.
I was
amazing. This is your call-up. You introduced her, although she doesn't need much introduction. Let's do it.
Yes, Jen Hildreth in the house. Listen, I thought this was so necessary given the fact that, we're about to have the Women's Euros this summer, but 3 years ago, given that it was not 4, 3 years because of COVID, we all convened in West Hartford, Connecticut at ESPN Studios and spent a whole month there drinking wine, sitting by the fireplace, calling games from the studio. But just a few games. But the time of our life, I feel like all of us would point to that summer and be like, game changer.
It was so great.
Yeah, it really was. It's like what broadcast is all about, is everyone sitting around sharing about the games, but then also just sharing about life. And because of the time frames, what were they, most were 12 and 2, is that right?
They were great. Yes. So nice.
And so we were done by 5 every day. And then we were in the Delamar, and what a beautiful hotel that was. And we're just getting bottles and more like cases of wine. Cases of wine, eating, ordering food, sitting by that fireplace and just enjoying life. And it was Bowdy, who's not here. Danielle Slayton, Jonathan Yardley, Seb Salazar. I know.
Emma Hayes
in the house. So yes, everybody. Harry in the house was there.
Yes, Harry was in the house. Love Harry. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jen, hi. Welcome to the Soccer Podcast USA.
Thank you.
Huge shout out there. Well, hey, so Lori called you up. So we do this fun segment. We started last week. We just call people up to just join. We can talk about whatever the heck you guys want to talk about. So last week I brought Chris Whittingham in, Lori's work husband. Now she brought you in. So what are we talking about, ladies?
We are talking about how Jen is also my work wife, okay?
Yes.
So we can't see each other. I know, we haven't seen each other in a bit. So that's
period of separation. It's sad.
Yeah, it is. And so we just opt to not talk because otherwise it would just be too painful. So here we are. But no, we'll reconvene sometime, I'm sure, late in the fall or this summer, something like that. Anyway, let's talk about what you're doing, Jen, because you've had an exciting year so far, a book that's come out.
Yes.
I feel like this also pertains to Christina, given that you are a mom and a working mom as well, a very successful working mom. So tough as a mother, bring it on.
Tough as a mother, let's go.
Happen to just have it sitting right here, beside me.
Is it a signed copy as well?
Not actually, it is. It's to somebody that I totally. You'll so appreciate this. It's to my hairdresser, and I gave her the wrong copy, and then I had to text her and be like, I have yours, so I'm gonna have to go drop this back off, and you got to give me the one I gave you. It's a mess because of course I can't keep it all straight. But anyway.
But you tough as a mother, and that's what happens.
Yeah, tough and all over the place. Yeah, as you well know. But yeah, I got to see Christina. What was that? Maybe it was a women's Final Four, so a few weeks ago, which is awesome, down in Tampa. Christina doing her thing as the multitasking business mom that she is. And so the book is all about, if I'm going to give it a little plug here just so your viewers know, it's about encouraging and empowering all moms, but specifically working moms. And we did it through the lens of women in sports because we felt like there are these traits that elite athletes and women in sports have that all working moms naturally have. And so we want to empower them to understand that they're there and that they can get through all the stuff that is really hard, because it is hard and we all struggle. And that's kind of what it's all about. Good Mother's Day gift, by the way. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Mother's Day is coming up. The one thing I love about is your co-author with you.
Amy Leone.
Amy is incredible. She worked with us at Fox Sports. Still at Fox Sports, right? Sorry, I'm losing track of everybody. But kind of a little bit of brief bio on her too, as well as to like the people behind this book, because what you guys did was incredible.
Yeah, I like to say that she was like we were each other's missing piece. We each had these ideas for what we wanted a book to be that we've thought about for a long time, and we came together, and I think that's honestly what made it into what it is now. And Amy is a senior vice president of talent relations at Fox Sports. Her kids are a little bit older. We like to say we're about 15 years apart in terms of our parenting, but we both felt this void of support, that we were just so alone and dealing with all this crap. Lori got to hear about most of the stuff after the fact, because my little ones, that I was going through all that crazy stuff when they were really little, before we were working together much, Lori. But you do feel so alone, and I think we just realized there's this real need out there to just encourage moms and let them know that they've got this, because it can seem really overwhelming and it can feel like you cannot do everything you want to do. Sometimes you can't. And sometimes you cry in your shower.
Yeah.
But you can get through it. But yeah, we have a great collection, great, awesome collection. I don't want to bore you guys. Well, the list of people will not bore you, but lots of soccer people in there. Alex Morgan, Christy Pierce-Rampone, Heather Mitz-Feely. We've got broadcasters, Hannah Storm, Andrea Kramer, myself, Tiffany Green, Laura Rutledge, a lot of ESPN representation there on my side. And then Amy also, her contacts are amazing. Dara Torres, Mary Carrillo. I mean, it is a powerhouse packed group of women, but we want to make it really clear that we're not like, look how awesome we are. It's like, look how much this 12-time Olympian struggled too. That's what it's really all about.
Yeah, I think what's so great about this is that you and I talk about this in a lot of different ways. Like as broadcasters, I think people forget that we're actually storytellers, and we're about telling the story of the players on the field, about the teams, the organizations. And I always remember, Jen, you were saying your mom's an artist, but in a lot of ways that your storytelling, yes, through your voice, but also through the written word. And I'm very, very excited and proud of you, because it does just show that you're telling these other stories in such a different way that you can't always get into depth on a broadcast.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And we really did want it to be, I just had somebody tell me the other day that they were reading it and they just felt so close to the person whose chapter. So each chapter is devoted to each particular person. So you are very much going to feel like they are talking to you. That is how we wrote it, how we did interviews with all these amazing women, and then we boiled it down to be in their own words. So their chapter is in their words, and they're talking to you, and hopefully you feel like they're having a conversation with you. And then every now and then Amy and I pop in with our little stories and anecdotes. We like to say we're like the friendship bracelet, weaving it all together. Got my Chef with some other bracelet on, by the way. But yeah, it does come back to storytelling.
You guys talk about the storytelling. Yeah, and I'm always so fascinated. I asked Chris this last week. I'm asking you this, Jen, this is you tell multiple stories among various sports. So, right, it's soccer, basketball. What other sports do you cover? I'm going to mix up with
softball some, but mostly basketball. Most of you got the main two right now. Yeah, soccer, basketball.
Yeah. So how do you keep track of telling all of those stories and those players and jumping back and forth? I know when you were here for the Women's Final Four for NCAA women's basketball, you're still prepping and you were still working next to a pool. I love the photo. But how do you tell those stories and narratives from so many different sports?
Yeah, the funny thing is when you ask how do you keep track of everything, and you guys, I don't know if it's this time in my life as a woman or hormones. I'm also getting a little hot right now, a little extra hot, flash action happening. I'm having the hardest time keeping track of everything. Literally the other day, I completely missed something. It was just an appointment for one of the girls, and I'm like, sorry, I just totally dropped that. So, I'm still so old school, as both of you probably know. I got my planner. I still write everything in here, which is maybe my problem. I need to just get with it, put it on the phone. And then I don't trust a lot to recall, quite honestly. Yeah, baby, there it
I have
is.
one
Keep that.
too. If it's not
gotta
in
get
here, you have to. That's how you know like you have double coverage.
all the
Oh, I don't have
utensils
that
and
many
the.
pens.
Well, that was only one of 5 that I have on my desk that looks like that.
No, it's arts and crafts in our booth during like games.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. There we go.
This is what I'm working on right now. I got the old Washington spirit this week in NWSL. So honestly, I do think that it comes down to you have all of these ideas and these stories, and the game is number one. That's why it's so hard within a game. You've got to stick to the broadcast because nobody watching that broadcast wants you to like dally so far off course that they are like, hey guys, pay attention to what's happening out there, but you want to humanize it and get these great stories in. And so I think that I like to have it all there, and then as the moments happen, you got to be ready to get them in there, but they've got to be so quick in this type of format, which is why it's great. Like what Lori does on their Prime broadcast, I love so much because you guys have time and your pregame shows and you're doing crazy stunts going on playgrounds, and it's just so much fun that you have the time to tell the story, which we don't really have, truthfully, in a game very much. All we give you are little snippets in the game.
Yeah. I'm curious, what's been exciting, the most exciting thing for you, or like when you look at your craft right now, like what's like really grabbing you in terms of where you are in your broadcast career?
Yeah, I think, it's such an evolution all the time. I was just down at NEP, which used to be Vista down in Fort Lauderdale, which I know. Have you been down there, Christina? I know Lori knows it very well. A lot of stuff happens. Okay, a lot of stuff happens out of there. And I actually just said the other day, I thought it would be really cool. We have there's all these different feeds. People probably don't know this. So like you watch an NWSL game. Laura, are you in Washington this week too? Are you doing that game on Prime?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing World Feed. So there's like at any given game for the NWSL, there's probably at least 3 different feeds, sometimes 4. And I said, wouldn't it be kind of cool if we could hear how we each like take snippets of it and say, here's how we came on the air, here's how we called the goal, here's how we handled this VAR review or whatever it was, because I think like you learn so much from hearing other people do it, and it's this fine line between you got to be you and do things the way you want to do it. But I mean, I'm constantly pulling and saying, oh my gosh, that was brilliant. Like, I love the way they covered that. Or, oh, that was a really great goal call by Mike Watts, or, whatever it was. So I think that always keeps me going. And I'm so passionate about the women's game. I'm so happy to be in the women's game and seeing it grow, both soccer and basketball. I do really love basketball. So I think that for me is really exciting. And my girls are a lot older, 2 teenagers, one's about to go to college.
I know.
Crazy.
I'm not ready for that.
They're so young.
Yeah, I know. So it's like in some ways things get a little easier because they are much more self-sufficient. So you can, go off and do your things and, the house won't burn down. And look, my husband does a great job too. I'm giving him lots of props. But so I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at, Lori. Like there's always a new challenge, a new adventure within the sport that we do all the time of just kind of how to continue to elevate it. That's always been the goal.
New challenge, new this. What is your latest and or your next concert you're going to? Because what many might not know. See, look how Jen responded to that.
Yeah,
she's a concert going. Where are you up to next? I love it. She'd always like show up in like an AC/DC during like pre-meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, an 80s cover band.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Lori, like what's so funny is like, am I shilling out some money to go see a real concert? Probably not. I'm probably going to go spend $20 at my local bar and see what 80s cover band is coming up. And I had to miss one a few weeks ago. I was just so worn down. We were supposed to go. It was really sad. But I'm sure I actually don't have one on the calendar. I've been so busy. And like the next month I have 3 trips to New York, which is all wonderful and great, but it's all like doing book, talking about the book and trying to get it out there. So I don't know. I don't have any, but I might go see a show in New York when I'm there. So
okay, I love that.
All right.
I'm just going to add on, Christina, that little do people know that Jen is actually thinks, or not actually, she thinks she's part of the band a lot of times. She's like, yeah. Okay, Chris, that's her husband, we're going to a show. And like she pulls out like an outfit that she's either cut up to make it into the 80s or she's bought it on Etsy. And like I'm like, are you part of the band? Like,
I love a theme. I love a good theme. And if it's 80s, I'm like, why wouldn't we dress up in that? And like, I don't even know if you guys can see, you probably can't. I am so weirdly old school in many ways, but I have like my CD player back there and my whole stack of CDs.
Oh, no.
Stop it. Is it
Yeah,
like
they're-
in like an actual book? You know how you flip when you were
I
driving?
have
and they
that
thought we were
too.
distracted driving now.
No, I have that too. That's so big. It's like giant. It's like my entire CD collection in the closet. No, it's like one of those standing towers, you know, that like rotates around and you put the CD cases in there. So
We're definitely
yeah.
not getting the Gen Z listeners. We've talked about Pinking the Brain, Carmen Sandiego, CDs. We've lost them all. We have lost them
Sorry.
all.
Yeah. Let's just throw like a hot to go. There we go. You're back, right? You guys with it now?
I think so, but I think I remember what Hot to Go is. So it's that song, right? Like HOTT. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Quinn would judge me. She just got off the bus. I just saw it on the app. Like my
That's their
kids
job.
delivered.
Yeah. Oh.
So.
We're so cringy to our children, are we not? Like, they're just always like, I made my senior, okay, Ashley. Do I have time to tell this like funny little story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have an 8th grader and a 12th grader. And my 8th grader, Madison, I forget at the end of the year that I order this whole package of like, that comes with a yard sign for whatever, the end of 8th grade, end of middle school. So then like I asked my senior, Ashley, hey, do you want like a sign that has your name on it? And she's like, no, I don't care, because they'll get one anyway, just a plain one. So then Maddie shows up and I forget that I've ordered, and hers does have her name on it. And it's huge, like, Madison, congrats, grad. And Ashley comes home and she's like, she's an 8th grader. I am graduating from high school. What is happening? So then I went and created one for her, but I put her face on it and was like, Ashley, we love you. And I made it huge. So now I have these 2 yard signs. So yeah, they definitely, they're here to like keep us in check, but sometimes we can give it back to them a little bit too.
Oh, God, you have yard signs. You would have yard signs of
know.
like, your children's faces. Oh,
Yeah.
goodness gracious.
Yeah, some people are political. They're like sitting there just putting the kid's face into the mix of it. I love it.
Why not? Yeah.
Awesome.
Jen, you're the best. Thank you so much for popping
Thanks for
on.
coming.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
fun. What were you guys talking about last week that I saw you put out and I was like dying laughing because
My naked
your
art
naked
on my
lady
wall.
photos. Christina, can we just
Hold on. I'll tell a story. I'll tell a story that I haven't told, okay?
Okay.
So last week, after this podcast recording, I had coaching calls, like actually immediately after, and I just like couldn't do it anymore. Like I was like, sometimes I'm just like, we've all seen naked women. I've said that before on here. So I moved back to like my more comfortable seat because I can plug in my computer, all of that jazz, right? And Jess McDonald, she's a colleague of ours, former NWSL U.S. Women's National Team. Yep, so she's
Mom.
on there. Yeah, I think we're talking to like Rob Gale, also a mom. Yes, exactly. And all of a sudden, I get like these DMs from Jess after the call, and she's like, Lori, did you know that you have like a huge like artwork of like a naked woman behind you? And she's like, because I was laughing the entire time. And I'm like, I'm not sure she was. And I'm like, Jess, I've chosen this artwork, right? And I was basically like, I just sometimes can't give, sorry I'm cussing, I can't give 2 shits, right? Like, we've all seen it. It looks hilarious, though, because it's literally this, like, woman laying down completely naked. But regardless, Jess is like, love it. Just love it. But she's like in my DMs being like, I can't stop laughing. So
I know.
Okay, here we are again.
So I just appreciate that came back out, because I think honestly, it's one thing when it's like women's soccer, but it's another thing when it was MLS, and you probably are still, you're still obviously doing that. But when we would do those calls, and I was just like, I'd be sitting there like watching their faces like,
And then Jen was also like, this is just Lori to the T. So
yeah. Welcome, world.
Yes.
I love it.
But I love what you guys are doing. This is great.
Aww.
Keep talking. No, it's so much fun. I'm going to try to log on and watch some more because I think it's awesome. So kudos to you guys for making this happen.
Yeah,
thanks for
no,
coming
and
on.
Jen, thanks for being on. You can hear Jen on everything, NWSL based, ESPN basketball. I just purchased her book on Amazon. So yes, moms, you can buy it in 2 seconds. It's great. I'm a lover of hardcover, so thank you for that. I'll always buy a book in hardcover. So get the book, Tough as a Mother by Jen Hildreth, one and only. Thanks, Jen, for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
All right. That was fun. What a great call
great.
up. I love Jen. Like, she's such a professional. Like, the first time I met her was at 2019 Women's World Cup. Like, I've known Jen's voice. She's the voice of, soccer way back in WPS days and all of that stuff. Yeah. So, like, it's, I usually, no offense to all our friend pundits, I actually pretty much mute when I used to watch my games and do my film analysis because they would always just be talking crap about us as referees. But I would always listen to her. I just like the tone of her voice, how she would tell the story, like the how detailed she is in the enunciation of names. I've just given up announcing names in Champions League and Europa. I butcher them all. So I'm like, the attacker did this because I just feel like I need to be harassed on that motion.
And having worked with Jen for a number of years now, and like obviously maybe not obviously, but one thing we spoke a little bit with Whitty is that in the broadcast world, like you become very much family with the person that you're working with. And Jen and I have worked so much that I consider her family these days. And as she mentioned to us, she cares deeply about the women's game, and it is so important for her to elevate the players, the league. And so, just love working with her and the craft and the work that she puts in.
Good call up. I love it. And then actually kind of just probably our last segment is to talk really about, you hit it on the head, like the women's game. I know we started to mention it, but, really big news that dropped a couple days ago was the NWSL second division application to U.S. soccer. There were some details that were put out, right, with respect to, who would be considered, what are the starting 8 teams, the years that all the teams are going to have their second division. We just talked about how the men's team, we're talking about the development and the pathway and the pipelines and, how do we do this? Now women soccer is finally here. What are your thoughts? You are a professional athlete here in the United States, the need for a second division and how this all fits in the ecosystem. What are your just first initial thoughts on that one?
Well, initial thoughts are the more opportunities, the better, because that was always the toughest part. The more visibility, visibility, opportunities for all of these players to continue to play at the highest level is my initial thought. I was actually curious, and I was super excited for us to be talking about this because I wanted to ask you first, just given how obviously how entrenched you are with the Super League and how you see all of this fitting in. Because for our listeners, one thing that has happened since actually end of last year for the NWSL, right? Beginning of the first year for the Super League. Am I right on those numbers?
Yeah, you're right. We're in like mid-calendar year, so the end of theirs is like the first half of ours. We start in August, and they end in November.
Sorry, I couldn't even figure out what date it was today.
No,
so
it's fine. Like when we try to do player loans, we're always discussing. We're like, what, your season, my season? Do I get them for half of my first of my season?
Exactly.
Are we doing a full season? Yeah, so you're not alone. The GMs and I are struggling at times.
For sure, and also a good problem for all of us to have because there's so much soccer happening. But at the same time, I was just curious because one thing that we have seen is loans and how crucial those can be and how wonderful that can be in terms of the synergy between the leagues. But do you feel like now with this second pro league coming in, does that take that away? Does it take the synergy and the back and forth of loans away? How do you see all of this fit together, even just outside of like more opportunity, more abilities for players to play at the highest level?
Yeah, no, I think it's needed. It's needed, and for the reason why is I call them the lost kids, and it's because I felt like you can talk about it, you can sense it, but when you have to tell a player that their contract's not going to be extended, knowing that not a club is going to pick them up for a guaranteed contract, right? Because whether they're coming back from injury or they didn't get playing minutes, right? You want to find and do anything you can to find another league, another competition that they can get meaningful book value. And right now, that's basically they have to leave the United States. Right? You can't play in, I think the other, the like semi-pros USLW, which is just really that stopgap summer league, right? For kids playing college who are still going back to college. They're not jumping into the pros. So that doesn't allow a professional athlete, because then they'd have to status wise drop to amateur to then jump back up, right? So it makes it a little bit wonky from a certification level, but these lost kids, and I say lost kids and even kids coming out of college who maybe they didn't peak at the age of 21, right? Maybe they didn't go to this big school, but they can make it. I always equate it to like American football. We just had the draft, right? So let's start trending. By the way, I always keep calling him Shonders, and Ted keeps getting mad at me because I've like mixed his first name with his last name and put it all together. So I'm going to keep that. So yes, everyone judge me, Shonders. Like, all of the draft stuff that's going on. But when people are all concerned about 5th draft, 6th draft, like, the tier of it, some of those become some of the best American football players that they've ever seen. And that's what we're missing, especially with Title IX and so many women college soccer players coming out, especially this past year, because of the COVID year. Many took their extra year, that you have so many women who want to play soccer at the professional level, but there's just still, even with the addition of USL Super League, the 8 teams and the 9th team coming in next year, we still don't have enough spots for women to play professional soccer. And like I said, I get it. Not everyone gets to be a pro athlete, right? You look at the data, and there's this whole FIFA presentation I saw where it comes out to like 0.005% of players around the world become professional athletes alone, right? Based on how many people play globally organized soccer to an actual professional contract. So I understand it's a rare number. I understand with, 14 teams in NWSL plus 8 or something. I could be off on NWSL's number, but we're still below the 30 number, right, that MLS has. So we're just trending and making up for years of lack of investment. But the second division makes sense because USL Super League is still first division professional football, right? So here, sooner than later, the players or collective come together, right? I know from the USL side of it, right, we're not fighting the collective bargaining agreement, or we're not fighting the player association from coming together. It's needed. So they're going to, once we get into starting to CBA discussions, and once they get kind of endorsed, like the minimums are going to be, the first year minimum salaries were matched with NWSL, right? NWSL just this year just jumped up to, I think, 48.5 for minimum sal. So there's meaningful contracts out there. It's just hard to give a player a contract that's guaranteed, which I'm glad it is. Just on record, I'm glad players have guaranteed contracts for a year under the FIFA rules and regulations of standard transfer of players, RSDPs. There you go. But that lets me, I know, sorry, I can dork out on this stuff, but that lets me then I can actually see a player in a professional setting, right? The number of agents are like, hey, my college kid should be paid X amount of money. It's like, your college kid hasn't been proven to be a pro. This is a rookie contract. We always negotiate the second contract. So this addition of the NWSL second division and their application, I know USL is looking at their structure from the youth to pro pipeline, because that's how they built out, is youth going to pro as opposed to pro going down to youth. That's not lost on them, that they're looking for a second division too. But just recently even announced was the I think it's like the WPSL Pro. Sorry, there's a lot of acronyms, but the WPSL Pro wanting to do second division as well. And
say it really fast. No,
WPSL Pro. I was like, done, I'm going to do it. We need this. I need a place where, right, going back to the loans right now, NWSL and USL Super League, we've been doing loans back and forth from club to club, right? So I know we got North Carolina Courage. Bobby and I were able to structure a deal where one of his players came in and she got meaningful book value minutes, right? Played very consistently for us in the fall, went back to her team, performed well in their spring season, and they've kept her, right? And so she's working out there. Sam Mesa is another name who is with Seattle Reign, and she played for Dallas, and she not by far, but she was such an impactful player in our fall season. But guess what? Now Laura Harvey got to see what she could do in competitive environments. The parity isn't that far off. Like I said, speed and strength is probably the cleanest parity, but when it comes to adding the second division, does that destroy the Super League or does that impact us, is probably a better way to say it, because I've seen some tweets on it. I said the answer is no, because we're going to be tapping into the second division too. Yeah. So NWSL Reserve has, and it was interesting of note, saying an unaffiliated team from another league can put a team into that league. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what the leagues end up doing on any other second divisions, or if WSLP Pro has one, which is backed by the Cleveland group that Caitlin Clark was part of, this just gives me more opportunity for scouting and development, for me to go up and down on loans. If a player is injured and I can't guarantee them a full professional contract, well, I can probably give them a semi-pro contract, right? And be able to see them. So I'm looking forward to it. I know that the soccer landscape's going to change quite a bit from the general manager's hat, which right now, shout out to Florida soccer referees. Love your referee. Don't yell at them. I'm into it. I know the landscape's going to change quite a bit. I know the GMs of other teams are saying we're still trying to really kind of put some, what do the finances look like? Because that's one thing people forget. You field a reserve team like MLS does, or MLS did, right? They had MLS reserves back in the day, and they would always play the day after, and then players who didn't play, who were part of the 18 but never saw the field, would play in that MLS reserve. It still costs you. You're still traveling a player. You're paying for food, you're paying for costs, you're paying for hotel, you're paying for airfare if you're going to go play at the game after. So there's some big financial considerations on doing it, but it's very much needed, and it's a conversation that if the NWSL and the clubs can afford to do that, then let's go. They've been around for 14, 15 years. Keep going.
The one thing that I'll add, and I love that, so thank you so much for that in-depth answer, because I think it's just gives all the detail on what is needed, how we continue to grow, how we continue to give players, as we were mentioning, opportunities. But I do remember just recently having a conversation with Laura Harvey, and we were talking about the no longer having a draft. And while that's is amazing for players, right? Because now it's like allocate, you can sign to whatever club you want, way more autonomy. There is, I guess the best way to say it is like there is a level of like shaking that out, right? In terms of like, okay, we've been so used to having a draft, and each team would be able to draft X amount of players. And so now what you're seeing in some regards is that there's like the top players in college are the ones that teams are going after, right? But there's been such an important group that maybe were the lower draftees that are just kill it in the league. And they're the important ones that that maybe are never going to get called up to the national team, haven't, or actually have because of through their play and just proving as they've gotten more time at the professional level. And to your point, maybe didn't peak in college or their early days in the NWSL, but they were given that chance, and they've just continued through consistency, hard work, proven how good they are and how important they are to this league. And my point to saying all of that, this now could give those players that maybe aren't in the top for whatever reason, opportunity to go in, start playing right away, and not necessarily, if you were drafted, sit on the bench, right? There's just such an opportunity to like immediately get playing time and essentially progress your football.
Yeah, and I would just add like that final thoughts on this is like, to your point right now, without having a draft, as I've noticed, is from the player standpoint, right? So people come here to the United States and say, hey, I want my kid to be identified by, how do they climb? Because we don't have traditional global academies where you're like, for example, if Tampa Bay Sun had an academy from like the youth all the way up to semi-pro to et cetera, how to get identified and seen throughout. We don't have that because there's so many different leagues and so many different sanctioning things. I realize that right now, a lot of these college players on the women's side don't know how to get identified, don't know the path, like all of the, individual emails that I personally get, which is fine. Like I get it. You guys don't know how to figure out how to be a pro athlete right now because you don't know what the path looks like. And I used to get that all the time from the referees who were trying to climb the pathway as well. Like this gives more of a defined path so that people can create their own luck, which is huge. If you can't afford an agent, if you can't afford, resources, if you don't know how, this kind of provides that equity where you can create your own luck. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it. Can't wait to see some more details on it. I know there's been some really good chatter on it, but no, contrary to some people's tweets, it doesn't destroy Super League. It helps us quite a bit, and can't wait to add to that fabric of women's soccer and the development side of it on behalf of all of this. But thanks, Saul, for being on the Soccer Podcast USA today. When this gets dropped on Thursday, I'm always bad at this. Kev is going to drive me nuts, but this drops on Thursday. Be sure to tune in. Give you guys another little quick hit, but stay tuned to listen more about the 12-man pass or the 12-person pass. Look at that for alliteration. We'll kind of drop a little bit about more what that means, but let's get the people into the stands because that's where the football magic happens. So, Lori, thanks for another great chat, and we'll talk again. We'll see you guys next week. Don't forget to follow us on the Soccer Podcast USA as we continue to bring you big names and bold opinions. That's it for our show. See you later.